In this video, you'll learn how to visualize your brand so clearly it becomes a reality. And we'll do this by creating a vision board. I will walk you through the exact process I used to rebrand after quitting a successful six-figure business so you can reinvent yourself and step into the new identity you feel called to. The first step is getting clear on what the time frame of your vision is going to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be 1 year. You don't necessarily need that type of pressure because the root of the mission that you have for your brand will always remain the same, but you as a person will constantly change. And so your personal brand should have permission to evolve with you. And I know because I've reinvented myself and my brand many times throughout big life changes like quitting my business, navigating motherhood. And the only thing that kept me grounded was a vision board that felt manageable and achievable. For example, right now I'm in my mom era and things change so much by the month. So how can I set a vision for 1 year? That's impossible. And instead, I've decided that for this year, I'll create my vision board quarterly. So the first one will be from January to March. And then, my baby will go to nursery 2 days a week in April. And so priorities will shift a bit and I will create a new one from April to September. So especially if you are in a season of pressure or change, I would tell you create a vision board for the next 3 to 6 months and then revisit it and build the following months with an updated version. Setting bold goals is important, but bold goals only work when you're genuinely committed and willing to put in the effort. And so before you set any goals, get clear on your main priority or focus. And so what is that focus, that North Star that will keep you grounded for the duration of your vision? So for example, for me, for the next 3 months, my main focus will be being a mom. And of course, that will always be the case, but once my baby starts nursery, this will create space for new things, whether that's getting back into shape or focusing more on my business. So whatever that is, define your North Star and let that inform your brand's vision. Next up, you want to pick a word and an affirmation to define the energy of your vision. The word and the affirmation you'll choose are deeply personal and connected to your personal story and path. For me, for example, this quarter's word will be presence, and the phrase, the affirmation will be, "You're so much more than a brand." Doing this can help you remember the type of energy that you want to carry throughout your vision. So for example, in my case, I really want to be present with my children and with myself as well, even in moments of difficulty or uncertainty. So think of a word or an affirmation that you want to associate with your vision for the next months and write this down. The next step is to write down a clear list of things that you want to let go of and things that you want to welcome into your life and into your brand. So think about it as if you're decluttering anything that is not serving you and making room for things that uplift you and make you feel good. So for example, in my case, I'm letting go of stress to create consistently. And I'm welcoming being okay with being slow and intentional with what I create. And you will notice that I am here mixing personal things with the way I decide to show up online as a personal brand. And that is so important. I don't think the two things can be divided because, once you're clear on what no longer serves you as a person and what actually matters to you, it just becomes much easier to focus on working towards that vision that you have for your brand. Now, this step is optional, but I highly recommend doing it because it can be a great exercise to help you flesh out your thoughts, especially if you're still feeling a little bit unclear about, how your vision is going to take shape. So what you're going to do is write down a letter to your future self as if she's already here. This will help you articulate what you want, how you want to feel, and the future that you are intentionally stepping toward. And then it's just very nice to revisit this letter when you're midway through your journey, and then again at the end of the time period of your vision to assess how things went so you can, reflect and make improvements for the next time. Okay, we finally got to the core step of your vision board. You're now going to make a list of objects, actions, colors and feelings that naturally express your identity and that you want to include in your vision. So I think the best way is to find icons that represent you best. And the way you will do this is to look around you and pay attention to what feels the most aligned to that core identity that you're stepping into. You know, what objects are in your home? What colors do you love the most? What textures do you wear the most? Are there any symbols that you feel connected to? Is there a special beverage that's part of your daily morning routine? What actions do you envision yourself making, and what feelings do you want to have as part of your brand? And then finally, what milestones do you want to reach that align with your North Star, you know, your focus, your main priority? So let me share with you some examples I have been putting together for my own brand's vision. As objects, I've chosen vintage botanical elements, hanging plants, jute plant baskets, gold jewelry, silk hair scrunchies, dark coffee. These are all part of me. They are in my studio, they're in my home, I wear them all the time, they just feel very me. As actions, I've picked baby wearing, because that's literally what I'm doing every single day with my baby, and I love it so much. Also soft woven wraps, filming YouTube videos in my cozy studio setup, and also reading bedtime stories and playing with my children. As colors, I've picked moss green, ecru, mulberry, and the way I did this is I used a color picker website. I will link it somewhere in the description box below. Essentially, I've uploaded some pictures where there were colors that I really felt were representative of my identity, my brand. And then I used the color picker function to see what actual color that was, so that I could add it onto Canva with the exact hex code. And these help me create a color palette that I had in mind for my brand. And then we've got feelings. In my case, these are nurturing feeling, balance, motherhood type of feelings, but also courage and boldness and feminine energy. And then milestones, for me, it's publishing my first digital product, which will be a YouTube and branding template for personal brands. So make sure to sign up to my email list down below to get a special founding member discount when the product is out. And so yeah, the more specific you can be, the better. So instead of saying, for example, I want to read more books, say, I want to read at least one chapter from my self-development book stack during my lunch breaks. And specificity is important because it will help you really get such a clear picture in your mind and then on your vision of the things that you really want and you see being part of your brand. Okay, now go on Pinterest and browse for pictures using keywords related to your list. First of all, choose images that follow your color palette so that your vision board becomes aesthetically pleasing and consistent. And I think that's really important to make sure that you feel aligned with your identity and your vision. And also it's important so that your brand will actually become more memorable. And then find images with people doing the actions that you've listed. And when you're looking for these images, make sure to choose ones where face is invisible so that it feels like it could be you in that moment. Also select quotes, phrases that really connect back to that vision, word, and affirmation that you had. Look for textures, objects, and symbols that best represent your brand's feelings. For example, in my case, I had, balance, nurturing motherhood. So I'm gonna look for linen instead of like leather textures. Or I had like bold energy. So that for me would be like coffee, a coffee mug versus, like herbal infusion. Or a sunset versus moonlight. These are just examples, but you get the point. And then for any milestones, you can create mock-ups using Canva. So for example, say that your goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. Well, you can overlay your current subscribers number with a black square and then write the actual milestone number that you have in mind over it using a similar color and font. Okay, now it's time to assemble your visuals on the board. You can choose to make a digital board with Canva or a physical one with a simple A3 cardboard or a cork or linen board and pins like I did. So the digital and the cork or linen boards are going to be the most flexible as you can easily move things around, especially if you plan to revisit your board quarterly like I'm doing. I've also done a cardboard version in the past and it works just as well if you don't mind to have a more static approach and are prepared to always create a new one from scratch. If you decide to make a board digitally, then you can go on Canva and select a Canva vision board template and then you can either follow the template. I personally prefer to free flow flow it. So I just pick, you know, the template so I have the format, the right size, and then I just remove everything. And you know, I like it because it's kind of like I can start over with a blank canvas in front of me. If you are making a physical board, copy and paste the images you selected on Pinterest and add them inside a Canva page. I'm personally using a 40 times 60 centimeters board, so it's fairly small. It's quite similar to a A3 paper format, and so I found that putting 3 to 4 images in one Canva page works very well for when I'm gonna print it out and cut it out so that it actually fits my board. Next, you want to print out those pages at home, or you can go to a local stationery shop. It shouldn't be very expensive. I did it this way last year and it was about $15 for like 15 to 20 pages. The quality, I have to say, was way better than printing from my own printer, but both work is fine. Now, once you've got your images, how do you actually arrange them on your vision board? As I mentioned, I personally prefer to free flow it and arrange the images in whatever way makes the most sense to me. To be honest, I don't think placement really matters. What matters is really follow your intuition and place them in whichever way feels most harmonious to you. And so in case you struggle with this step, the best way I think is to try to balance different images by alternating colors, shapes, and textures. Something else I would like to do after I have my vision down is to think about how this is going to translate into my actual content and how I will show up in the online world. So personally, my way of showing up online is through this YouTube channel and through my Substack newsletter. And so what I like to do is to visualize the content I will be creating by planning the next 90 days worth of videos in advance, and then preparing a very simple mock-up in Canva of how the actual thumbnails for each video will look like. So I write the title and draft up some thumbnail ideas. I use Canva AI and ChatGPT to help me out, and then I add all of these in my mockup. And don't mind ChatGPT unimpressive skills in rendering human features, but this simply serves to give you a good idea of what your thumbnail is going to look like. And so I highly recommend you do the same, because it really gives you a clear idea of how you're going to show up and how the way you show up is going to align with the vision that you've set for your brand. Now that you've got your vision board ready, the final step is to make sure that it's visible at all times. Trust me, when I had mine chucked in the corner of my studio, it really served no purpose, as I literally eventually forgot about it. And so you want to add it in a spot where it's visible at all times. For example, that could be on a bookshelf or in a room where you walk in every day. It could be on your phone or on a desktop wallpaper, you know, just anywhere where it's in sight and you can actually see it on a daily basis. Because the point is to keep your brain constantly engaging with that vision. And so every time you look at it, you're reinforcing that idea that what's on that board is possible for you. And then when your brain believes something is possible, your actions naturally start to align with it. So take action following your North Star, and I promise everything that's on the board and that brand that you envision will become a reality.